The next thing to think about here is derivatives. So in the physical world, when you are making copies, they are imperfect copies. And during the copy operation, they're imperfect because that information might be altered in some way. Think about how artifacts creep in from making multiple generations of photocopies or copying compact cassettes from one to another. I mean, the strange thing is that that the digital world is so prevalent that this idea of, degenerating generations is becoming more and more foreign as we do less and less physical copying. But it is one of the aspects of physical copying. So when you're working with physical collections, you are often dealing with whole hierarchies of reproduction media to help manage this degradation. So for example, you might be familiar with the idea of master recordings in the audio world. The master recording is the most original, least corrupted recording of a song. This picture displays, one storage vault of lots and lots of master recordings on open rail tapes. Now, often these are very, very seldomly played, since the act of playback itself can alter that physical media in some way and destroy some of the information contained. So what you do is you take that master recording and you use it to create multiple production masters, which can then be used to create more production submasters or to create the final physical media, depending on how many copies that you need. Those final media are missing information that was present on the original media, both because the copying process is destructive and also because the final media doesn't need to have the same quality. This is, kind of prevalent when you think about things like compact cassettes. Here is a GIF of a mass compact cassette copying machine. You can see how casually it treats the tape, because the value of the compact cassette was not about the high quality of the audio. It was pretty good for its time, but it was really about the fact that it was so small you could put in a Walkman and that you could walk around and listen to music wherever you wanted to be. And so sure, there is lots of information lost, but there is lots of value gained for the people that were using compact cassettes because they were more usable in that way. However, in digital collection work, we also use derivatives. And now that's not because we are afraid of corrupting the original. We don't have something like, don't touch this file because it will be corrupted by its usage. But it is because of that compact cassette idea, where a derivative might be more useful to the final user. So for example, a TIFF image is a very common master file format used in digitization and imagization. And a TIFF image is often hundreds of megabytes large. If you create a JPEG derivative of that file, it reduces the file size to a few megabytes. So it reduces the size hundreds of times. And that JPEG is much easier to transmit over the internet, to store on your phone, to embed in a paper that you're writing, to just use as an image the way that you want to use an image. However, compared to the TIFF, the JPEG will have less detail. And I've tried to represent that on this slide with these side-by-sides. You can see the color's been a little bit distorted in the JPEG on the right. If you really want to go into it, you can see that the sort of gradation of color is also distorted, although it is hard to use a video to display differences between two images. But a JPEG is always going to have less details, its colors are going to be less accurate, it's not going to be quite the original. And that is completely fine for the vast majority of users. They are not going to need every single pixel perfect representation of the original file that was created. But for the organization managing the collection, it is important for us to retain that best version of the image. So we will actually retain the TIFF and we will retain the JPEG. We will retain that image in many different versions because we are supplying it for many different use cases. Now, you may hear people being distrustful of digital copies, claiming that data is constantly being recompressed when a file is created or that it's being altered as it's going from place to place. Now, when you hear that kind of thing, always ask whether the speaker is basing that on experience of the artifacts that accumulate in physical copying processes. Because for now, just remember that computers make perfect copies. Once you have that JPEG that you made, you can copy it as many times as you need, and the first copy will be as perfect as the millionth copy. They will render into the same image. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes there is this doubt of like, digital rot kind of creeping in by copying files. That's not really a source of this kind of thing. That's a bad analogy from physical collection management. Another thing that I want to talk about derivatives is a question about vocabulary. Um, so this is one thing that I do in this class is, generally derivatives and the way that we manage these different generations of things, they have used the term master to indicate that the object is one that other generations are derived from. So you have like a master reel or a master tape, and then you have subsequent generations from that. Now, the etymology of that usage of the word master in this context isn't incredibly clear to me. It could come from a couple different places, but there is enough usage of master-slave analogies in computers that I just kind of prefer to use the word file instead of master. So generally, I will say, preservation file, where others might say preservation master. And I try to make an effort to, update all of my standards to that place. I also, if the kind of social argument is saying that the usage of the word master is not one that sways you, I also think from a technical standpoint that it makes sense to think about other ways to use or other words to use, because when you're thinking about files, again, we're thinking about lots of copies. And when you're thinking about master, you're typically thinking about one thing. And so if it's good practice to store multiple copies of file, but you have something called a preservation master, does that mean that one of those is the master copy, or that all of them are the master copy? Like, it gets into weird semantics of saying like, what exactly is the unique thing that we want to attach this weird word to? Instead, they're all just preservation files. Like, I just like to say, like, there is no specific role that any of these files has that is sort of leading the other ones. However, they all do have this role in our workflow to say, like, these are the things that are the preservation original that we want to build away from. So, or build our generation stacks from. So, that's a vocabulary term. It's something that people are debating in the field, but generally in this class, I will use the word file instead of master, and you probably won't hear me say that word again for the rest of this class.